My wife and I have always been weekend warrior campers. If we're not working, we're in the mountains, usually with our big goofy black lab who thinks every trail belongs to him. The high Uintas have kind of become our place. Quiet, remote, and empty in a way that makes you feel like the whole world shrinks to just the three of you. Last summer, we hiked into a small lake we'd been to once before. Nothing dramatic about it, just still water, thick pines, and a shoreline that melts into miles of dark timber. We set up camp right near the bank, cooked dinner, played with the dog. It felt like every other peaceful weekend we've ever had. Right after dusk, though, the first thing happened. Across the lake, somewhere deep in the tree line, a human scream ripped through the silence. Not an echo, not an animal, not someone joking around. A real, sharp, panicked scream that bounced across the water like it had been thrown at us. My wife and I both froze. The dog perked up, staring toward the far shore with his ears pinned back. For a minute, we just stood there listening, waiting to hear another voice or someone calling for help. But nothing followed, just the lake settling back into that strange mountain quiet. We eventually convinced ourselves it was someone messing around at another campsite, maybe a late hiker slipping on rocks. It bothered us, sure, but not enough to leave. The fire crackled, the air chilled, and everything fell back into the familiar rhythm of being outdoors. Around midnight, we crawled into the tent and fell asleep almost instantly. It felt like seconds later when our lab started growling. Not whining, not pacing, that deep, chesty rumble dogs make when they're staring directly at something they don't like. I felt him moving at the foot of the tent, his whole body tight. My wife nudged me awake, whispering that she heard something outside. When I unzipped the tent, the dog shot past me like a bullet, straight toward the backside of the campsite. I stepped out with my flashlight, still half asleep, and before I could even click it on, I heard it. Footsteps. Fast ones, rushing away from the rear of our tent through the dirt and pine needles. I snapped the light up just in time to catch two silhouettes, human silhouettes, sprinting into the tree line. No talking, no hesitation, just gone. It was like they'd been standing right behind us. My wife came out shaking, asking what I saw. I didn't sugarcoat it. Two people, I told her. They were right behind the tent. Leaving in the middle of the night wasn't an option. The trail was rocky, the lake was isolated, and the nearest truck was miles of dark forest away. So we built the fire up higher, sat with our backs to it, and stayed awake. I kept my .357 revolver in my hand the entire time, not because I wanted to use it, but because it felt like the only thing keeping us from being completely helpless out there. Our dog stayed glued to our side, staring into the trees like he was waiting for those silhouettes to come back. They never did, but neither of us slept a single second until the sky finally began to lighten. At dawn, we walked to the spot where the dog had charged and where I'd seen the silhouettes running. The dirt there was disturbed, clear footprints, more than one set, and right in the middle of it all, half buried, was something catching the morning light. A large knife. We didn't touch it. We didn't take pictures. We didn't try to track anyone down. We just packed camp at record speed and got out of there. We still camp, almost every weekend, still in the Uintas. But if we're being honest, we don't sleep as deeply as we used to. We don't dismiss screams anymore. And we've never forgotten the feeling of knowing two people were standing just feet behind our tent in the dark, watching. I still don't know how we made it out of that night alive. Back in the late 90s, my buddy Ryan and I had planned a weekend camping trip up near Whiskey Mountain on the edge of the Wind River Range in Wyoming. Remote country. One of those places where the map has more contour lines than towns. We left after lunch, figuring we'd reach the trailhead before dark. But somewhere south of Lander, on Highway 287, that long, dead stretch where the sagebrush seems to swallow the horizon, My old F-150 started coughing. A hard jerk, a metallic rattle, and then nothing. We rolled onto the shoulder and sat in silence as the engine ticked itself to death. No cell service, of course. It was the 90s, and even if we had phones, out there they were just expensive paperweights. For the first half hour, the silence felt peaceful. By the second, it felt like we'd been forgotten by the world entirely. Sun going down, highway empty, temperature dropping fast. Then, just as the horizon bled into that deep Wyoming purple, headlights appeared behind us, the first we'd seen in over an hour. It was an old, square-body Suburban, paint sun-faded to a dusty tan. The driver slowed, rolled down his passenger window, and leaned over. He looked normal. 30-something, rancher vibe, denim jacket, trucker cap. He talked slow, friendly enough, and offered us a ride to Crowheart, the nearest town. We didn't have options, so we grabbed our packs and climbed in. The moment the door shut, something felt off. Not wrong, just off. The truck smelled faintly of old cigarettes and something metallic. The interior lights didn't come on when the doors closed. The dash was cluttered with maps and loose papers, but nothing personal. No photos, no receipts, nothing to show another human had ever been inside. He didn't say much at first, just hummed along with the soft static of the AM radio, but I kept noticing how his eyes flicked to us in the rear view. Not curious, calculating. About 15 minutes in, Ryan nudged me subtly. We were heading west, not north toward Crowheart. You, missed the turn, Ryan said, keeping his voice casual. The man didn't answer, didn't even look at us. He just gripped the wheel tighter and let out this small, strange laugh. Not amused, more like he was laughing at a joke the rest of us didn't get. We ain't going to Crowheart, he finally said. My stomach dropped. Where are we going? I asked. He didn't respond. The radio hissed. The truck drifted onto a side road I hadn't even noticed, an unmarked ranch track cutting into darker country. No houses, no lights. No reason anyone would drive that road at midnight. That was the moment I realized we might not survive this. I leaned close to Ryan and whispered, "Next slow turn, we're bailing." The man kept humming that same shaky tune, knuckles white on the wheel. Eventually the road curved, forcing him to slow to maybe 20 miles an hour. The Suburban leaned into the turn. Gravel crackled under the tires. I met Ryan's eyes, counted down with my fingers. 3, 2, 1. We threw the doors open and jumped. We hit hard, dirt and rocks scraping my palms, the wind knocked out of me. But adrenaline shoved me upright. Ryan did the same, limping but moving. Ahead of us, the Suburban's brake lights flared red as the man slammed the truck to a stop. He jammed it into reverse. "Go!" I yelled, and we sprinted into the sagebrush. The night was so black it felt like running through ink. No moon, just distant stars and the crunch of our footsteps. Behind us, the engine growled as the man backed and turned, headlights sweeping the scrub like search beams. Every time the light passed over us, we dropped flat, hearts pounding against the dirt. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 5 minutes, he finally gave up. The engine revved hard, and he sped off, the sound fading into the endless Wyoming dark. We didn't dare go back to the highway. Instead, we kept moving downhill, toward where we knew ranches sprinkled the valley. The night was freezing, our clothes dusty, our nerves shot, but we walked. Miles. By the time we reached the edge of a tiny, remote community, maybe 6 houses scattered near a creek, it was nearly 2 a.m. We knocked on the first porch we saw with a light on inside. No one answered. Tried another. Finally, an older woman cracked open her door, chain still latched, and stared at us like 2 ghosts standing on her steps. "We're sorry," I said, my voice shaking. "Our truck broke down. We need to call someone." Something in her expression softened. She closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it wider. "Come in, boys. Phone's in the kitchen." We stepped inside. Warm light, the smell of coffee, a ticking wall clock, and for the first time in hours, I felt human again. Sheriff came out later, asked a lot of questions, but nothing ever came of it. The Suburban was never found. The man was never identified. And to this day, every time I drive through that part of Wyoming, I can still picture those brake lights blazing ahead of us as we hit the dirt and scrambled into the darkness, and hear that quiet, shaking laugh from the front seat.